The internal rate of return, IRR, is the discount rate that makes the net present value, NPV, of a project zero. In other words, it is the expected compound annual rate of return that will be earned on a project or investment. In this example, an initial investment of $50 has a 22% internal rate of return or IRR. That is equal to earning a 22% compound annual growth rate. When calculating IRR, expected cash flows for a project or investment are given and the net present value or NPV equals 0. Put another way, the initial cash investment for the beginning period will be equal to the present value of the future cash flows of that investment. That is, cost paid equals to present value of future cash flows, and hence, the net present value equals to 0. Once the internal rate of return is determined, it is typically compared to a company's hurdle rate or cost of capital. If the IRR is greater than or equal to the cost of capital, the company would accept the project as a good investment. That is, of course, assuming this is the sole basis for the decision. In reality, there are many other quantitative and qualitative factors that are considered in an investment decision. If the IRR is lower than the hurdle rate, then it would be rejected. The IRR formula is as we can see here. In this formula, CF1, CF2, CF3, up to CFN, represents cash flow, CF0 represents the initial investment, the small letter n represents each period, the capital letter N represents the holding period, NPV represents net present value, and as we know, IRR represents the internal rate of return. Now, calculating the internal rate of return can be done in three ways. Number 1, by using the IRR or XIRR function in Excel or other spreadsheet programs. Number 2, by using a financial calculator. And number 3, by using an iterative process where the analyst tries different discount rates until the NPV equals 0. The goal seek in Excel can be used to do this. Let's look into an example of how to calculate the internal rate of return. A company is deciding whether to purchase new equipment that costs $500,000. Management estimates the life of the new asset to be 4 years and expects it to generate an additional $160,000 of annual profits. In the 5th year, the company plans to sell the equipment for its salvage value of $50,000. Meanwhile, another similar investment option can generate a 10% return. This is higher than the company's current hurdle rate of 8%. The goal is to make sure the company is making the best use of its cash. To make a decision, the IRR for investing in the new equipment is calculated here. Microsoft Excel was used to calculate the IRR of 13%, using the function equals to sign followed by IRR. From a financial standpoint, the company should make the purchase because the IRR of 13% is both greater than the hurdle rate of 8% and the IRR for the alternative investment. So, what is the internal rate of return used for? Companies take on various projects to increase their revenues or cut down costs. A great new business idea may require, for example, investing in the development of a new product. In capital budgeting, senior leaders like to know the estimated return on such investments. The internal rate of return is one method that allows them to compare and rank projects based on their projected yield. The investment with the highest internal rate of return is usually preferred. Internal rate of return is widely used in analyzing investments for private equity and venture capital, which involves multiple cash investments over the life of a business and a cash flow at the end through an IPO or sale of the business. Thorough investment analysis requires an analyst to examine both the net present value and the internal rate of return, along with other indicators, such as the payback period, in order to select the right investment. Since it's possible for a very small investment to have a very high rate of return, investors and managers sometimes choose a lower percentage return but higher absolute dollar value opportunity. Also, it's important to have a good understanding of your own risk tolerance, a company's investment needs, risk aversion, and other available options. IRR sure has its own disadvantages. Unlike net present value, the internal rate of return doesn't give you the return on the initial investment in terms of real dollars. For example, knowing an IRR of 30% alone doesn't tell you if it's 30% of $10,000 or 30% of $1 million. Using IRR exclusively can lead you to make poor investment decisions, especially if comparing two projects with different durations. Let's say a company's hurdle rate is 12%, and 1-year project A has an IRR of 25%, whereas 5-year project B has an IRR of 15%. If the decision is solely based on IRR, this will lead to unwisely choosing project A over project B. Another very important point about the internal rate of return is that it assumes all positive cash flows of a project will be reinvested at the same rate as a project, instead of the company's cost of capital. Therefore, the internal rate of return may not accurately reflect the profitability and cost of a project. A smart financial analyst will alternatively use the modified internal rate of return, or MIRR, to arrive at a more accurate measure.